Today we are making a torch. I always say to a student, hey, I want you to make a light source that actually makes sense. In other words, they usually just plop in a static light, and the light bulb itself, this thing right here, if you go add actor, add point light, this is incorrect. I mean, you can make this, but it has to have an actual physical thing that makes light, not a magical light bulb that just floats there. So a torch casts light, so therefore it makes sense. Now, the static lighting, I'm pretty fond of it, but not really fond of it. I like the fact that, I want color to be broadcast correctly, and I like using emissive because emissive gives us, you can see how dynamic this rock really looks, and if I went into unlit, it just looks like so it doesn't look that good, but here, amazing. You can always back emissive up with static also. So if you go right click here and just add actor, add point light, I can always put this up here and then double click on it and turn it way down, like maybe a 0.25. And you can also go in here to the scale display, turn that really far down. That way the light bulb makes sense. So we can back emissive up using static. But again, you can see just without it, it's not so bad either. So what we're going to be looking at is how to make an emissive property on an object, like this torch, because sprites don't cast emissive light. So I'll show you how to model the torch, lay out the UVs, create some procedural material for the handle as an example, and then we bring it all back into the engine and light it on fire. Wow, so you get fire, light, awesome. Alright, let's go on to the next video. This is just the introduction. Alright, so we begin in Maya, or Blender, whatever you prefer. And looks like I don't have Maya open, so we're going to go with opening Maya. Alright, start out with a box, 6 on a keyboard, grab the face on the top and bottom, hit extrude, right click, go to object mode, click back on the box, smooth. This will create a cylinder, and unlike this cylinder right here, this has bad geometry. This one has good geometry, so we'll use it. Now, just a little hint, having bad geometry and good geometry, this one you have to do UVs on. So if you go into Window UV Texture Editor, I have this, which are bad UVs. So I have to do some automatic mapping where I get good UVs. And then I don't like how the seams are, so I'm going to see how there's 2 here. I'm just going to grab these, holding shift, just like that. So I'm kind of doing a little marquee swipe, and then I hit move and sew. There we go. So now we have an enclosed object. An alternative to that is actually make one of these cylinders and cut the top off. So I'm just going to give you kind of a double whammy. So you could take the faces at the very top, hold control swipe, delete, grab all, hold control swipe, delete, grab all the vertices, hit R and we can scale those flat. And then what we get is a cylinder that we didn't have to do the UVs on. So given the choice, I'll let you decide which way you want to go. So that one or this one. Now the thing with this one is it doesn't have an enclosed top, so you would have to make an enclosed top too. That's why I like doing it this way, because it's less steps. Okay, other than that, I am going to use this primitive, which I don't really use very often because I don't like the polar cap on it. But the UVs on a sphere are pretty fun to lay out. So I'm going to actually use it where it's already laid out for me. This is going to hold a texture, a material, and there's nothing fancy about this. So you barely see the sphere because it's going to be a rotating texture. Okay, Shift D to duplicate it. I'm going to make another one. I'm going to make this one just a little bit bigger and put it right there. Okay, so it's actually on top of the other one. Alright, now let's take this huge hot mess. Since Mudbox is actually an educational priced thing where you can get Mudbox free as a student, I'm going to use Mudbox 2 just to kind of shape this around. So I'm going to send to Mudbox, send as new scene. Keep this mesh. Okay, so I got the 2 meshes or 3 meshes in here, and I could toggle between them just by like this. There's that one. There's the smaller one. Okay. So the smaller one, all I want to do is make it more cylindrical, and I like using the grab tool. If someday they wise up and put the grab tool within Maya, that would be an amazing day, I think. So you see how I'm having trouble grabbing this thing, because the one thing about Mudbox and Maya is the scale. So I'll show you the little trick here. Grab all your meshes, go to scale, go to group them all together, make them bigger, and then send to Mudbox as a new scene. Don't save there, keep this mesh. Now you're going to find out that things are a little easier. Wow. So I'm not looking at anything prize sculpting here. I'm just looking at making this not look like a ball. Okay, and then underneath it, there's another little sphere. That one. And I'm making that more look like a wrap. The last one, which is this one, I don't want to mess, so I'll lock that one out. Okay, so if you could think about having a piece of cloth wrapped on a stick or a Q-tip, and that's what you're aiming for here. And then this one, you're just trying to over topple that, because this will be the flame of that. It's like that. Cool. And all together it looks like a giant match. Alright, so let's put it back into Maya. Perfect. I would say this needs to be a little longer. 4 on the keyboard to move it down. And be able to see where it's at. Alright, next thing we need just a little bracket to hang it. I'm not going to make anything super special here. Just take a box. Grab the 2 faces. Mesh smooth. Grab another box. Jump into my top view. 4 on the keyboard. I want insert edge loops. Which are right here. I made a shortcut for this in Control R. And I'm just going to jump into the vertices and kind of shape this around to be a little bracket. Just like that. Shrink it down a little bit. Kind of form it up. And I'll have that in here. I'll have this just a little bit bigger. And I'm trying to make this really super simple because what I want to do is I want to use this video for my level design class. And, you know, like those students, you know, I would say they have, you know, they're just starting out. So their modeling skills haven't been really up to par because they don't practice enough. But this will give them some practice and make it smaller. Okay, so here we get duplicate special, square box, -1 scale. And there we go. Something really super simple. And then we can combine that together by grouping it. That way we can scale it. And when I'm happy with it, then I can combine it. Just like that. Okay, so let's put this whole thing at an angle. Okay, grab it all, group it, rotate it together. And I would say if this is going to be on a wall, it's going to have to go like that. And then this is going to have to be longer than the actual pole itself going into the wall. So let's jump into a side view. And move that out. Alright, cool. And I'm jumping between views. Just over here you can jump between views, but I have a shortcut key for like Control 1 goes into side, Control 3 goes into front, and Control 7 goes into top. So learn to, you know, look at your hotkeys and look up hotkeys. Actually, I got a nice hotkey maker in my channel somewhere. Just type in like viewport hotkey, and then I'll show you how to set that up if you're ever interested in that. Alright, if you ever want to move a part, hold Control, grab some vertices, Control right click to shell, and then I can move these shells individually. Like this one needs to be centered just a little bit. So that's a very super simple way to model out a torch. Now let's look at actually texturizing it. Oh, and let's fix the UVs on this one too. So I'm just going to create some automatic mapping for this part right here. This one's already done. And let's combine those two together as far as the mapping is concerned. So we got this pole, but we got these pieces. These pieces are going to be a procedural texture, so it's nothing to write home about. And it's such a small part that we wouldn't have to worry about laying out the UVs too much as long as they're not overlapping. So I'm just going to worry about this cylinder. Again, just holding Control and Shift there, and then hitting Move and Sew. I'm going to move this to the corner. Make it a little bit bigger. So now these two pieces are part of the same shell, and I can combine them together by Mesh Combine. This one is all by itself. This one is all by itself. All they're doing is they're laying on top of each other as far as UVs are concerned. I'm going to make these a little bit smaller, so when I do a rotate on them, on the UVs themselves, you'll see how that works in the UDK. Back up a little bit. There we go. We jumped to the other UV set for some reason. Which I didn't have to begin with, but that's alright. It's all good now. There we go. Now we're ready for exporting. So let's go to the next video. Material channels. Okay, so we have the torch, it's all modeled out. We have to now go into rendering editors, Hypershade, and we have technically 1, 2, 3, 4 materials to make. Okay, so what I like to do is delete all these materials, remake 4 of them. Lambert 1 does not count, and I name these something I need. Like this one's going to be a wood texture, this one's going to be brass of some nature, maybe bronze. This one's going to be the embers, and this one is going to be the flame. Okay, and then I just double click on these to assign them to colors that make sense to me. These are not going to show up in the engine. These are just for my the ability to see that the right material is on the right thing. Okay, so there's the wood texture, but these things right here, these are separate all together. So I'm going to grab the faces here, Control right click to UV to shell, and then assign this one brass. So just like that. Flame, and then the embers. There we go, just like that. Okay, now what I could do is just export this out. Now we have to know what size it is, right? So display grid 132.1. Went kind of fast there. 132.1 for the grid spacing. Okay, so 3 of these are the height of a man. Oh, again. Now we're ready to group the whole hot mess together, so I'm just going to combine it all, and that way we can just scale it. So if this is the height of a man, I'm going to say right about here is a torch for that man. That's just eyeballing after, a few times of doing this. I wish this was angled up more, just a skosh. Kind of like that. Of course, that ruins all my mapping, and I have to redo it just because of that. Now they're all combined, so it makes it even more of a fun thing. Control right click to shell. And now you can go right click, assign existing material, and this one's brass. So I guess it gives me the opportunity to show you a different way. Control right click to shell, assign existing material, wood. Right click to shell, right click, flame, click, control right click to shell, right click, embers. There we go. So that fixed that up. Now we could just go file, export selection, square box. Let's assign this to an FPX export. And in here, make sure smoothing groups is on. Make sure embed media, there's no media, but I keep that checked. This is the key that every student misses. FPX 2013, because the engine hasn't caught up with 2014 yet. So I always go a little below what the engine is, because Maya is always well ahead of the UDK. So that'll keep it from having a whole bunch of errors. And then you should export this into your UDK under content. I made a work in progress directory. I have a torch in here. I'm just going to make a torch 2. Alright, there we go. The export, the everything else. So, let's go on to the next video where we import it in and go start to compile the maps together for it. Alright, so I'm going to show you how to do making like some procedural textures. A couple that I use all the time, like wood, brass, and if you go to Google Images, if you go to Google, then drop down the search tools, you can go to larger than, and then you can choose something like 8 megapixel. Then shop around for some texture. I found this log. I'm not using this for gain or profit. It's all open source education. So make a new one. Hit OK. Paste it in. And then I'm just going to go image, canvas size. And this is very close to 2048 by 2048. So I'm just going to go like that. Perfect. Now you can see I can still have that just the way I like it. And I'm grabbing the move tool. Make sure show transformation control is on. That's often a quick question by students. Well, I can't do that. You can't do it because the controls were not on, and therefore you can't see these little dots in the corner. Okay, so I'm going to make this relatively small because I use it all the time, but it needs to be smaller. That way when I use it on little objects, it looks better. Okay, and I'm going to stretch it out. Okay, you can see wood texture does a nice job of maintaining that even though you stretched it. Okay, now hold Control or hold Alt. You can make a copy of that. And then if you take an eraser tool and you use something like with a number 17, make it bigger, and just kind of hit this with the eraser tool on the edges, just like that. You're going to find that you can do a nice job of blending wood texture together. And sure, there's going to be some clone stamping to do. But this gives you your base. Okay, so Control E. Okay, then I take this texture and I duplicate it and I offset it just a little bit. Okay, then I'll take and erase some of these lines. And you'll find out that you can make some deeper grooves. Just like that. And then I'll clone stamp some of this stuff out. And I clone stamp it just like this with the wood grain. Perfect. Now if I want to make it truly kind of a procedural thing where it can be scaled in any which way, I'll Control E it, and then I'll do an extra step here. So marquee select it, edit copy merge it, edit paste it, and then I can go filter other offset. And I can offset it by 1024 by 1024. Okay, see the color difference here? Huge, right? So, that's a pretty big difference. But remember, I have a copy of this, so just erase and fade it in. But don't touch the edges. Cool. Okay, Control E. And I'll do some color correcting here. So there's some dodge and burn things we can do. Looking better. Okay. Last but not least, I'll do some like levels. Fill some of these dead pixels. I'll do some image adjusted hue saturation. I like colored my maps, but I really like to keep them muted. That's just my thing. And I like to filter, sharpen, smart sharpen them. Alright, so now this thing is very tileable and we can use it for a great deal of things. So save as, and we'll save this right in my work in progress directory. There we go. Wood procedural 1, color map. And I'll just stick to color maps today, but I'll just say that, you know, a normal map can be produced pretty easy using the video tools normal map filter within Photoshop. You have to use multiple layers, and you can see that if you don't do it ahead of time, like edit, copy, merge, edit, paste, that the filter for NVIDIA freaks out. So see how this one actually works correctly. I use RGB bias and the rest of it scale set to 4. I don't like this little thing right here. There we go, little clone stamper. And I'll save that as a NM. Oh, and I should be saving these as TGA. So this is my NM. This is my CM. So that's how you make a procedural texture. When I say that, and it's tileable, it's just basically taking a texture that's already on the internet or a texture from your camera, shrinking it down, and then making it more uniform so it can be placed on smaller objects and still make sense. If you just take that one texture and put it on an object, it's not meeting the scale of the object, and therefore it won't look good. This will fit a great deal of objects. So I'm not going to go into the brass and bronze part of it because I do the same thing as I did with the log. It's just I don't stretch it and I just make little pockets here and there. I have tons of videos for that. So let's go on, and I'll use maybe some of the brass and bronze that's already in the UDK for the next part. Okay, so for this next part, I'll just go to new level, blank map, don't save. I'll go into my content browser here, and I'll start importing some stuff in. Import, and I'll import my torch 2 and my color map and normal map. Import it within my package. I don't want to import the materials or the textures. Because that will make new ones. Okay, so the normal map, I got to double click on that one and turn it to TC normal map for the compression. Okay, close that out. I can right click on one of these and create a new material. Okay, and for the simple material here, I'm just going to go like this. Click on the texture, go in here to the material editor. This is where two monitors really does come in play, but I can't show two monitors at once. You can see this one already came in. I can hold control and drag that one around. And this one, click on it, hit T on the keyboard and click with the left mouse button here. It'll bring it in. So I can assign this one to diffuse and this one to normal. Now there's a few other things you could do with this, but for right now I'm just going to keep it super simple like this. Oh yeah, and something really cool, if you type in texture coordinate, you can go like this, and another texture coordinate like this. So let's say I wanted the scale to be a little bit smaller. Well, I can grab this and click on 2. And see, now it's scaled it down because it's procedural. This one I can scale that one to 2. So now the normal map and the color map matches. I know, right? Amazing. So now you can put this on even smaller objects. So that's what I'm talking about with being very procedural. It's easy to adjust, tileable, and easy to put on other objects. Alright, so there we go. Let's get that out of there. So I have this torch 2. Let's double click on it, bring it up in the texture or the editor. Here I want to make just a 6D collision. What that looks like is this. Okay. Now you can make it more complex, but really that's all I need for a torch that hangs on the wall, I think. And you can see by assigning all those materials in Maya, I now have those materials here. And if I click on the branch, I can see which one is attached to the handle here. So in this case, I want this material to be attached to this handle. Okay, and if you want to see that, you just go like that. So that's why I'm saying if you have it really contrasty, it sticks out a little bit better, but for right now, there we go. If I wanted to change the size of that material, again, you just go into material editor. Instead of having it at 2, you can take it 1. And then when I hit update, you see, well, that looks like a better size. All these cool tricks. Okay, earlier I found just a material for bronze in the engine, so I'm just going to use that one for time constraints. And since I didn't make this one, you'll see the difference between making one and using somebody else's. So you can see this one isn't as detailed, but it does have a nice sheen to it. Okay. Now that we have those are my bases. Let's go on to the next part where I do the flame. I want to separate the flame from the actual base just because it's a little bit more complex. Okay, so for this next spot, just make sure you're always saving. So right click, save your package. Alright, we're going to need something within the engine. You can make this in Maya, but I don't want to make it like that. I want to just show you that this stuff isn't too scary. So what I'm looking for here is a material and the material looks like kind of like a flame or an aura of a flame. All these great materials all within the engine. And you can learn so much by just looking at some of these. I think we're very close to it. Yeah, there it is right here. So right click and you can say create a copy. So I'm going to copy this into my area. And I'm going to call it vid for doing it for the video. Okay, also there's an explosion back there, so if you go like this again, highlight UDK, you get all of it, and this is the one I was talking about with the explosion. So I'm going to take that and create a copy and do that one. Ooh, that was, maybe that's okay. Hopefully I did that right. So I should be able to go there, and I should have this one for the vid and this one for the vid. Good, did that right. So right click and save. Now I can augment these and it won't matter. That's why I made a copy. Alright, so let's double click on one of these. And for this one, I don't want to do too much. I just want to texture coordinate. And I'll go down here and assign that to it. Now, I want to spin it though. So if I type in spin, or rotate, sorry, rotate, I get rotator. So let's right click and break the link, put this one over here, and attach this one here. It'll start rotating. And for the texture coordinate, I type in the coordinate. And then I need a time. So let's go to time. And attach time in here. Now for the rotator, its time is not dictated on time, it's here. So speed is, let's say, 0.80 for 80%. And you can see how it's got this little stuff going around the outside edge. Well, my texture coordinate, actually I'm going to bump that up to 2 and 2. And it's just going to do some crazy stuff like that. Alright. Another thing I don't like about this one, it's driven on vertex color for the emissive, which is way too bright. So instead of the vertex color, I'm going to use a constant. Because a constant you can turn down. So right click, break link. This one I'm just going to attach to A. And I'll type in like 0.80. Okay, now I have the ability to like tone that down in the emissive properties. I'll get rid of that one. Alright, so that's that pimped out material. Now it rotates around and it has the ability to turn it down. Close that out. Let's go back to the torch. Double click on it. Grab that one. Find the tip to it and assign that material. Now I think you could see that a little bit better. Hold on. Let's go back to the material. For the texture coordinate, I'm just going to put that back to 1 for right now. So it just spins. And I'll put that in game to see what it looks like. It's not supposed to be weird ghosty thing like that, but we'll see what happens. It might look better in game. And for this one, for the material, there it is. Double click on that. I'm just going to add the rotator feature to it. And for this one, I could do the coordinate system, but I don't really feel like that. I'll just have it just like this. There we go. And then let's grab this one. Go like that. Okay, it does need a little bit of texture coordinates now that I look at it. And I know what's wrong with the other one now that I think about it. Yeah, that's better. Okay, now the other one, what's wrong with it is if you look at it in Maya, this little top part, if you look under the UV properties, under UV texture editor, I bet you anything, like when I combined it, it used the other set. So it's actually UV set 1. So in the engine, what happens, the material for this one you look here, and then I got this one. So you can see that double set of UVs there that are being represented on that one, not the other one. Okay, how do you fix that? You can go back to Maya real quick, and you could just say, go to this one, copy UVs to UV set 1. And I think you have to grab the UVs first. Okay, so now I have 1 and 2. Alright, good. And then I can just go back to object mode and export selection, export back to Torch F2 FBX. And this is what's nice about this workflow is you can move very quickly between things and correct them. So right down here, I can now right click and re-import static mesh. That's better. Okay, so the tip is actually going to be covered over with a sprite, but this just gives it the illusion of being more on fire. The inside doesn't really have to rotate, and what that'll do, it'll make it look more like a wrap. But I'll let you play around with it. I just want to make sure that you know how to take and rotate things and not rotate things. So in this, you know, if I just take the rotator and turn it off, or break that link, now it's more like that little section's on fire. And then you can choose how many of that I want to wrap around, and that's where the texture coordinate comes in handy. Okay, so that's that. Okay, in the next video I'll just kind of place it in game and put a sprite on top of it, and we're going to call it, there we go. Alright, so I'll go new level, I go blank map. I like starting out with a blank map because I have more control over lighting this way. Okay, there's my light. And now I just need something for it to sit on, so I'll just do terrain. And I'll jump into my top view. Kind of put that into the middle of the terrain. Just like that. Go back to perspective view. Bring that down. I also need something for it to sit in, something for it to light up. So I'll just look for something like junk in the engine. And I found this nifty rock the other day. This one. I'll just scale that down because I don't need it to be the size of that. Go like this, move this over. And there we go, we got a flame on the wall. So the idea why I made this whole Norwal project is because I want the color of the flame to be represented here on the wall. And the only way to do that is using emissive based lighting, because sprites don't emit emissive light. In here, if you look for particle systems, you're going to find that there is a nice flame already. And it's rather big, so I'm just going to scale that down. Jump into my side view. Place this within the center of that mesh, and then in the center of it here. Then jump back into perspective view. Now I have this. Okay, so this part of it, double click on it, and you can go EMI and say use emissive light source. That's the one most missed by students right there, the emissive light source. So now I have an object that casts light, that actually casts light. Okay, the one thing about this static mesh though, I would say, is it doesn't have to have light mass, and the reason for that is it's too big of a hot mix. So if you go back to here, And for mine, if you double click on the actual static mesh itself, it'll bring it up in static mesh editor, and you can take the light mass coordinate down to 0, and that will make it so there's no light mass on it. Okay, let's build the lighting. Another thing that would be nice is a light mass importance volume around the level. It would speed up the rendering quite a bit. But since it's such a small scene, I don't think we have to worry too much. There we go. That's what I want right there. Now, had I used just a regular old static light, it would not be as dynamic as that. So that's pretty epic, I think. Let's play in level. Around, where's that at? Over there. So there we go. Now you could probably get away with sizing the mass, the bigger one, down just a little bit, and the inside's not too bad, but the outside's kind of big. I'll let you use your best judgment for it, but that's how you make a torch that's emissive and cast a light onto a regular object using that color of the texture and material. So in a sprite, if you double click on a sprite, which is really hard to do now, if you type in EMI, there is no emissive properties for a sprite. Now there might be emissive properties for the material on the sprite, but trying to get to that is a nightmare. I like having the emissive properties on a texture on the object rather than the sprite. Alright, so that's how you make a torch for the engine. I hope you enjoy.